1.3, equivalent fractions. Equivalent, remember, equivalent means the
Equal to.
same, equal to. So equivalent fractions are two fractions that represent the same number, okay? To write equivalent fractions, you multiply or you divide the numerator and the denominator by the same non-zero number. So this is it in letter form. A over B is the same as A times C over B times C, or A over B is the same as A divided by C over B divided by C. If you do it in number form, if I have 1/3, if I take it and multiply 1/3 by 2 over 2, I get 2/6. 2/6 and 1/3 are equivalent fractions. Or I can say 2/6 and divide it by 2 over 2, and you get 1/3. 2/6 and 1/3 are equivalent fractions. On your homework tonight, you can have several different types of answers because they're going to ask you on some questions like this in blue, write two equivalent fractions. You and your neighbor can have different ones. That's okay. Okay? So what would be an equivalent fraction to 8/12? Oh. Okay, Josh, what?
4/6. Is that
4/6. If I divide both by 2, I get 4/6. So yes, 4/6 is an option.
Are we finding the smallest?
Or you could do
No.
2/3.
2/3.
2/3 is also one. Now, tell me one where I don't divide. Tell me one where I would multiply.
1/2.
Okay, what?
No. That's
One.
No. It's not 1/2. Tell me one where I would multiply
16
16 24ths. Okay. So all three of these
Oh.
are equivalent to 8/12. They're all equivalent to each other. Does that make sense?
Are we gonna make a tree with it?
Nope, not right now.
A what?
No.
Factor tree.
You don't have to do factor trees.
I hate factor trees.
Okay. So as long as you multiply the top and bottom by the same thing, or divide the top and bottom by the same thing, you have an equivalent fraction. So on your homework, just divide by the same thing, multiply by the same thing, you'll have equivalent fractions, okay? What about 6/9? Jason, give me an equivalent fraction for 6/9. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to multiply by the same thing or divide?
I know this. I know it.
I'll get you next, Corey. I'll give you, I'll let you do 6/9 in a second.
6/9.
Okay, Corey, what? Help him out. 2/3. If I divide both by 3, I get 2/3, right? There's one equivalent fraction. What else?
Divided by 3 is 2/3.
12/18. You multiply both by 2. 12/18 is another equivalent fraction, okay? Jason, are you following? Do you understand what we did?
Wait, 6 divided by 2?
Okay. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3, yeah. So those are all equivalent to the original fraction, okay? It looks like you can do that. You can handle multiplying, you can handle dividing. Simplest form is the next thing that we're doing. Simplest form. When the numerator and the denominator are relatively prime. So what you are doing, what does relatively prime mean?
They can't go any
somewhat-
smaller?
Numbers can only be divided by 1 and 5.
Well,
that's the definition of
Factor
prime.
is 1.
Yes, the greatest common factor becomes 1. Okay? So prime numbers are when they're only multiplied by 1 itself, but relatively prime means that the greatest common factor of both is 1. Okay? So I want to get 12/30ths in simplest form. What can go into 12 and into 30?
3.
What, Emma? 6 is the largest one.
Good job.
2 can, but if it was 2, I would get 6 over 15, and then I would have to divide by 2 again, right?
And you would
You
get.
can't divide 50.
That's not what's
I would have to divide by 3, and I would get 2 over 5, right? What?
That's what I was asking before if we were trying to simplify it.
Yes, we are going to simplify it also. So if I divide both of these by 6 over 6, correct, because that's the greatest common factor between them, I end up getting 2 over 5. This is the simplest form. It's relatively prime. Okay? 1 is the greatest common factor now between the two of those. And both of them just happen to be prime numbers themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, 28 over 49.
Divided by 7.
Can 7 go into 28?
No.
How many times?
4.
Okay, so if I divide both of these by 7, I end up getting 4 over.
7.
This is relatively prime. The greatest common factor now is 1 between both of them. Even though 4 has more options, the greatest common factor is now 1. So we got it into the relatively prime form.
Yeah.
So when you are doing simplest form, you're finding the relatively prime numbers, which means the greatest common factor between the two are 1. Okay?
Okay.
Carter, read our word problem.
There are 48 conegos.
What does that mean? Who knows what that means?
What did you say?
Is that condo?
Contiguous?
Wait, what?
Not contiguous.
Huncho.
Oh,
Is it
is that
Contiguous?
It's
like
C-O-N-T.
Is it
Contiguous.
like
Isn't it contiguous?
No, contiguous. Contiguous.
Oh,
Okay, 48 contiguous, which means they're what? They're connected. So there are 48 states that are connected, okay?
Together.
Oh,
2
it's
states
called
are not
America.
connected.
Hawaii and Alaska.
Hawaii and Alaska.
You
Good.
said what?
well, technically Hawaii.
Okay, so 48 of the states are
He said
connected.
California.
of the
Keep going. Yes.
Out of the 48 states, 21 are coastal states.
Yeah, 21 are coastal, meaning they sit on a coastline,
Yes.
okay, where the water is.
Write a fraction in the simplest form.
Josh. Yes. I can't either. Keep going.
States that are coastal states.
Okay, so they want us to write a fraction in simplest form of the states that are coastal over the states that are, connected. So 48 states are connected. Of those 48, 21 sit on the water. Okay,
So it's
21
number 48.
coastal. So how do you write that?
21 over 48.
Okay, but it says in what form?
Simplest.
Simplest.
Or the most
So that means
In simplest form. So you are correct. I'm putting 21 over 48. Is that the simplest form?
No, you divided by 3.
Yeah, three.
See, I was gonna say that, and then Emma said.
If I divide by 3 over 3, I get what?
7 over.
Seven
What?
over.
Seven
I got
over-
it.
Over 15.
16.
No,
48 divided by 3
wait.
is 16.
33, 36, 39.
16. Now, is that in the relatively prime
Why do you
form?
have to do it
Yeah.
so slow? That just
Yes,
makes it
it
weird.
is.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. It's
No.
relatively prime in that
No,
form.
you don't have
7,
to-
16. Stop. Stop, boys.
Yeah.
If I do number 1.
We'll see. Okay, now, look. Now we're throwing variables in with simplest form.
Oh,
I
know
have
what to do.
10xy, 15y squared. Start with just the numbers. Reduce that first. What does 10 over 15 reduce to, Josh?
You can subtract by 5.
Wait, what's the
You
number?
can-
You
I
can
divide
divide
by
by
5. I'm sorry.
I can divide by 5. So up top I would get what?
What's the
2
number?
thirds.
Never mind. I see it now.
I got it.
2/3. Okay. So I have 2/3. Now, look. Is there an x on the bottom?
No.
No. There is no x on the bottom, so I have to keep that x.
Keep.
Okay. Is there y on the bottom?
Yes.
How many?
2.
And how many's on top?
1.
So where does my y go? Top or bottom?
Top.
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 No.
So this is the least.
It's on the bottom.
Wait.
It's on the bottom
What?
because there are more on the
Get
bottom.
back straight that. I'm
So
kinda confused, Will.
here's the deal. Wherever there are more is where the number's going to, where that variable is going to stay. Okay?
Okay.
Because if there's more, I can't take away as many from that one.
So like 2, it would be up there.
So you have this 2x over 3y. Okay? 2x over 3y is the simplest form. You reduce the numbers first. Listen to my steps. Always just look at the numbers first and reduce them. You can handle that. You showed me you can handle that through here. Okay, reduce the numbers first. Then take each variable individually. Okay? So let's look here. Tell me, what does 21 over 11 reduce to, Jacob?
11.
11.
Yay.
11.
No, it's
2 over
already
11.
reduced. It's already reduced. You can't
What?
reduce it.
But what? Oh,
He's a genius.
wait.
Who?
Let me think. 21 over 11.
Can
My
anything
man
go
was
into
smart.
21 and
2
go into
over
11?
1.
No.
What? But 11 divided by
Stop.
what?
Stop
Jacob.
yelling. Listen, stop yelling. Look at me.
What's the
21 over 11. Nothing can go into 21 and into 11. Correct?
Yeah.
Because 11 is a prime number, yes?
Yes.
The only thing that- So can 11 go into 21?
No.
No. So I just leave it as 21 over 11.
Would you just write
You
prime?
gave me a
for
trick
the
question.
No, you would write 21 over 11. Now,
That's what I said.
look at this. You have A's, yes?
Yeah.
How many A's do I have up top?
3.
How many on the bottom?
So it'll be up top.
So it would be up top, good Josh. And how many are up top?
3.
2. There are
What's
3
one I thought
here.
was
There is 1 here. So what happens is this. Watch. This is what's actually happening. It really says this: 21 times A times A times A over 11 times A. What happens is this cancels out, leaving me with how many A's?
So,
2.
So.
We'll look at another one.
Wait, what can? Wait, so what?
I reduced. I canceled out these A's.
so you.
Why?
minus One, like,
Because
say
I'm
you-
reducing. I'm putting something in its simplest form. Yes.
So say you have 3 on top and 2 on the bottom. You would just minus that one.
Oh.
You would do.
Yes. You would have 1 on the bottom still.
I don't understand.
Jacob, we're getting there. We're doing more. 6b over 24b squared. Okay. 6b over 24b squared. Look at the numbers first. What does 6 and 24 reduce to? Carter, I know you get this. You're done. Okay. E, what does 6 over 24 reduce to?
1 over 4.
1 over 4. Good. 6 goes into both. So 1 over 4. Now, how many b's do I have here?
1.
How many do I have here?
2.
You
Two.
would have 1. You would take away the top one and put 1 at the bottom.
Correct.
Why?
Because
Jacob,
You
listen.
sound like Miss Walton.
When you reduce, okay, if I have 15 over 25, that's the same as saying 3 times 5 over 5 times 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay, this would cancel, yes?
Sure.
Yes.
And it would leave
Oh,
you with
wait.
3 over 5,
Is it-
correct?
Then why you still got 1B left? It's supposed to cancel.
Here's why. If I have 6b over 24b squared, that means I have 24 times b times b. How many of those can I cancel?
Oh!
Just 1.
My dumbness has become a little more smarter.
Does that make sense more that way?
Yes.
Okay. So on your homework tonight, you are working on finding equivalent fractions, which means your answer can be different than your neighbor's. Okay? You are working on simplest form with just numbers. You are good at that. You can do this. You're working on some word problems and setting up fractions. Then you're coming to simplest form with variables and numbers, with variable expressions. Be careful when you do this. If you need to multiply it all out like I do that and cross out what's the same. Okay? So it's kind of up to you there.